Did China historically have a caste system? A lot of X accounts have recently been claiming that Imperial China and or modern China had a caste system like India's. China's four occupations could be compared to India's four castes. So they say. There's been a lot of beef, ironic, I know, between Indians and Chinese on the internet recently. Why are some Indians calling Chinese people Shang on X? You'll soon see. Are these memes about a Chinese caste system accurate? They're not, but the truth is more interesting, and it helps explain why China has been so powerful throughout much of history. First, what exactly is the Indian caste system? There are four main castes, and within each caste there are subcastes. From highest to lowest, these are the Brahmins, priests, Kshatriyas, rulers and warriors, Vaishyas, merchants and craftsmen, and Shudras, farmers and unskilled laborers. A fifth, even lower group are the Dalits, street sweepers, people who clean human and animal waste, and those who handle dead bodies. These are also known as the Untouchables, and were actually considered outside the caste system altogether. The caste system started out as your run-of-the-mill ancient hierarchy that every civilization had. But the system that was originally somewhat flexible became more rigid over time. People were locked into their caste, and there were restrictions on interactions with other castes. Lower castes were sometimes banned from temples, they sometimes had to drink from different wells, and were not allowed to eat with people from higher castes. Caste discrimination still exists, but it should be noted that it is no longer officially enforced. In fact, there are affirmative action programs and quotas for the lower castes. What were the four occupations in China? The Simin, four occupations from highest to lowest, were Shi, scholars and officials, Nong, farmers, Gong, artisans, and Shang, merchants. There was another category, Genmin, slaves, prostitutes, and entertainers, and they were below the four occupations. So with both India and China, you have four groups and an outcast group. In India, the caste system is intertwined with Hinduism, and in China, the four occupations are associated with Confucianism. I don't consider Confucianism to be a religion, but that's for another video. The differences are greater than the similarities, however. Some accounts from India and other South Asian countries are using Shang as an insult. The idea is that the Shang, the merchants, are actually an impoverished, oppressed class. I should add that other Indians on X are not going along with this. They're pointing out that this is stupid. Some are claiming that it's all trolling. Some of it is trolling, but there are some people who unironically believe this. If your only exposure to Chinese culture was Mulan, the cartoon, not the live-action film, then your knowledge of China would probably still be better than that of those people who are making these memes. The four occupations were not hereditary. Social mobility was possible, and China was probably the most meritocratic civilization in the pre-modern world. There were tests, open to all social classes, and a good score could have you rise from the peasantry to the imperial bureaucracy. Social mobility was more common in China than in other countries. Now, let's not overstate things. If you were born a peasant, it was unlikely that your family would have the means to hire a tutor so you could score well on the imperial examinations. But it wasn't impossible to go from farmer to scholar. And this is part of what allowed China to be such a powerful civilization throughout much of its history. While the rich and their children had more opportunities, they couldn't be complacent because they could lose their privileges. Likewise, the poor could gain privileges. There was at least some sense of meritocracy, much more so than in other civilizations. And the Genmin class, the closest thing to the untouchables, was abolished in the 18th century. There are famous examples of social mobility in Chinese history. The Ming dynasty was founded by Zhu Yuanzhang, who was born a peasant and is known as the Hongwu Emperor. Liu Bang was born a peasant, but later became a government official before founding the Han dynasty. He is known as Emperor Gaozu. Zhao Feiyan rose from being a courtesan, an entertainer, to an empress during the Han dynasty. But most of all, what people are missing is that the four occupations are merely rankings of how Confucian scholars viewed the honorability of each profession. The scholar was viewed as more honorable than the farmer, who was viewed as more honorable than the artisan, who was viewed as more honorable than the merchant. The scholars and farmers were essential. They were the roots of society, while the artisans and merchants were the branches. But in later centuries, all four occupations were seen as essential. Now look at this poor Shang here. Were the merchants poorer than the farmers? Of course not. In most cases, it would be better to be a merchant in ancient China than to be a farmer. Their occupation was just seen as less honorable. In modern society, a factory worker is seen as a better person than a payday lender. But the payday lender is better off financially than the factory worker. The caste system still exists socially and in legal categories, even if the subordination of lower castes to higher castes is not government policy. The four occupations don't really have much relevance in modern China. Modern Chinese do not classify themselves as Shi, Nong, Gong, or Shang. What does exist in mainland China is the hukou system, which determines someone's benefits based on where they're from. But this is location-based and not comparable to the occupation-based caste system. Also, whoever made this meme clearly didn't do any research, as we saw earlier. They have the anti-Semitic Chinese Wojak as the gong, the artisan. Another user did at least a few minutes of research, probably skimmed the Wikipedia page, and decided to make the merchant a Chinese Jewish caricature, but then flipped the position of farmer and merchant and thus subverted the hierarchy of the four occupations. Anyway, if you think I'm wrong either about the caste system in India or about the four occupations in China, Please let me know in the comments.